Tonight, Donald Trump drops a punishing new tariff threat in a direct letter to Mark Carney. When Canada will be charged and how much.
I think that's, not realistic at the present moment.
And doubts from a former Canadian ambassador to the U.S. about reaching a deal by the July 21st deadline. A community's sense of security shattered.
It's shocking. I'm numb.
The teenager charged for viciously attacking an 8-year-old girl. Zeroing in on why a BC restaurant owned by a famous Indian entertainer was targeted.
This is Modi government's disinformation machinery.
And controversy over who claimed responsibility. Plus, why Alberta is pulling some books from school shelves. And riding a personal journey to the finish line. How the brother of Terry Fox led a team of cyclists to retrace the route of a Canadian hero.
To be on the other side really proved to me that what Terry did was incredible.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news tonight and another shot fired in the U.S.-Canada trade war. Donald Trump releasing a letter to Prime Minister Mark Carney late this evening. Let's get straight to CTV senior political correspondent Michael Couture. And Mike, in this letter, a couple of new threats. What exactly does it say?
Yeah, Omar, President Donald Trump is accusing Canada of financially retaliating against the U.S. And so he's vowed that starting on August 1st, he will impose a 35% tariff on all Canadian goods going to the U.S. Now, that's separate from the current sectoral tariffs. Trump goes on to say in that letter that if Canada raises its tariffs, quote, whatever number you choose to raise them by will be added onto the 35% that we charge, end quote. All of this comes 11 days before Canada's self-imposed deadline to make a deal with the U.S. and just one day after Trump said 50% tariffs on copper would also be applied on August 1st. And more than half of Canadian copper goes to the U.S.
We'll fight against it, period.
A defiant declaration from Canada's industry minister talking about the threat of 50% tariffs on Canadian copper. While meeting the Vancouver Board of Trade, Melanie Joly said protecting jobs remains the government's focus in this trade war.
We denounce these illegal tariffs, and we think that they're a direct attack against our workers and now on in the copper industry, and so we'll fight against them.
While the fight continues on one front, negotiations with the U.S. are ongoing. Today, the Foreign Affairs Minister said she believes a deal can get done before Canada's self-imposed deadline of July 21st.
I will say that we are still hopeful that an agreement can be achieved indeed.
But one of the people who negotiated the last trade deal with the U.S. disagrees.
I think that's, not realistic at the present moment. I don't think that we're going to be able to achieve very much of significance over the next 11 days.
Canada's former ambassador to the U.S., David McNaughton, also sits on the Prime Minister's Council on Canada-U.S. relations. He thinks the government should extend discussions until U.S. President Donald Trump softens his stance.
When some of the things that he's doing start to bite on the American economy, when inflation starts going up, when things start to slow down, I think that will be the time when we can make a fair and reasonable deal.
And a deal by July 21st seems even less likely now, with the U.S. president threatening to cripple the Canadian economy in just 3 weeks, Omar.
Michael Couture on those late-breaking developments this evening. Mike, thank you. And tariffs are being blamed for two key pieces of equipment in Ontario's emergency response being grounded. Air ambulances serving Toronto will be temporarily out of service because of a parts shortage tied to supply chain disruptions caused by U.S. tariffs. Both are expected back in the air by next Friday. An Ontario community is still reeling tonight after a teen was charged with attempted murder and sexual assault on an 8-year-old girl in what police initially thought was an animal attack. Here's CTV's Katie Griffin.
In Quadville, there is disbelief.
Devastated, heartbroken. I don't know what else to say. It's shocking. I'm numb.
A 17-year-old boy who can't be identified because of his age, charged with attempted murder and sexual assault with a weapon on a person under 16 in connection with an attack on an 8-year-old girl last month.
A lot of community members are, how can this happen in our community? And how do we understand that we can move forward and make it better for our community?
The girl was reported missing the night of June 23rd. She was found critically injured in a forested area hours later. Some say it was a miracle she was alive. Police initially suspected the girl's injuries could have been caused by an animal and asked parents to keep kids inside. But investigators didn't rule out human involvement. They say samples taken from the victim's wounds recently revealed no traces of animal DNA.
Investigators can't pigeonhole or just totally tunnel vision an investigation. They have to look at all other aspects. So the investigation continued in many ways. One of them resulted in this 17-year-old being arrested this week and charged.
The 8-year-old girl remains in hospital. People here who have been able to go and visit her say she is recovering and even smiled at them. The community rallying around her.
She will bounce back very well. And will she forget? No. But she is a very strong girl, very strong.
A lot of residents have expressed frustration with police, wanting to have been told more information sooner. Ontario Provincial Police say they recognize there are a lot of questions and concerns from the community, and they will be hosting a town hall on Saturday. Katie Griffin, CTV News, Quadville, Ontario.
There is also shock in Surrey, BC, after a restaurant owned by an Indian star was targeted. CTV's Andrew Johnson on another possible link.
10 shots are fired from a handgun toward Cap's Cafe. In a video posted to social media, police say they are analyzing. The newly opened restaurant is owned by popular Indian actor and comedian Kapil Sharma. There were staff inside at the time. No one was hurt.
Still too early to determine what the motive behind the incident is, but in the coming days, what they'll be looking to do is try to determine whether it has any connection to any other past incidents.
News outlets in India are reporting that a Khalistani separatist leader has claimed responsibility, a claim one pro-Khalistan group calls propaganda.
This is Indian media. This is Modi government's disinformation machinery.
6 separatists believe the attack on the restaurant owned by a high-profile entertainer is an Indian government attempt to distract from violence and recent extortion attempts against South Asian businesses. They are also pointing to the June 2023 murder, also in Surrey, of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused the Indian government of being involved, souring relations between the two countries. A June report from Canada's spy agency calls India one of the main perpetrators of foreign interference and espionage.
If there is not going to be any accountability, you mark my words, there are going to be more assassinations.
It's all creating a lot of fear for people in Surrey, home to BC's largest South Asian population.
They came here because they think the system is very good. And Canada is a safe country, and we can raise our kids and enjoy the life, but things are changed now.
Despite India's alleged ties to violence and extortion, Canada and India recently agreed to re-establish diplomatic ties when Prime Minister Mark Carney invited Indian Prime Minister Modi to the G7 summit in Alberta. Omar.
Andrew Johnson in Vancouver tonight. Andrew, thank you. Manitoba has declared a state of emergency for the second time this year over raging wildfires threatening northern communities.
We need access to more facilities to be able to shelter this large number of Manitobans who are being forced to flee their homes.
With more than 100 fires burning, officials say in terms of land burned, this is Manitoba's worst wildfire season in 30 years. The military is helping fly out more than 4,000 people from the remote Garden Hill First Nation. The town of Snow Lake, north of Winnipeg, has also declared a mandatory evacuation order. We now know the identities of both pilots who were killed in a tragic crash in southern Manitoba earlier this week. 20-year-old Savannah May Royce from Ontario was one of 2 students learning to fly when their small planes collided mid-flight on Tuesday in Steinbach. Her father is a career helicopter pilot. Her classmate on the second plane was identified yesterday as an Indian national. Alberta schools will soon be pulling books from library shelves. CTV's Kathy Lee on what's sparking the controversial ban.
A new chapter for Alberta school libraries. The government announcing what it calls clear guidance on the kinds of books that shouldn't be on shelves.
School libraries are not permitted to include material containing explicit sexual content.
The province defines explicit sexual content as containing a detailed and clear depiction of a sexual act. The announcement comes 2 months after the government identified 4 coming-of-age graphic novels found in Calgary and Edmonton school libraries that contained graphic sexual material.
The fact that it was readily available to kids as young, K to 9 schools, that's just not appropriate.
The new rules also stating only students in grade 10 and above can access age-appropriate, non-explicit sexual content, and all students can access non-sexual content such as health matters like puberty or pregnancy. Despite the guidelines, teachers can still use any book within their classes for educational purposes.
The government won't provide a list of problematic books as a reference. Instead, teachers and librarians will have to comb through their repertoire and find the books that fit the guidelines and remove them by October 1st without additional resources or funding.
This will be some extra work, but it shouldn't be extensive.
This ministerial order does nothing than add to teacher workload, politicize an issue, and target vulnerable kids.
The province insists this is not a book ban, but critics disagree and say it's a slippery slope.
We find it's very dangerous for government overreach when these decisions are local. Eventually, what does that come down to is it going to be censorship at the government's discretion?
Consequences for school boards not complying have yet to be determined by the government. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Ottawa is pondering a new rebate program for vehicles. Here's CTV's Adrian Gabriel on the driving force to repay EV dealers who, in some cases, are on the verge of bankruptcy.
A controversy that began following an electric sales weekend.
This has been a 6-month hardship for small independent dealerships across the country that have been owed $11 million by Transport Canada.
On Friday, January 10th, car dealerships across the country received this email from Transport Canada saying in part, due to the high uptake, the EV rebate program will be paused in a few weeks. That weekend, a handful of Tesla locations across Canada reported the sale of 8,600 vehicles, amounting to $43 million in taxpayer-funded rebates. By that Monday, the federal program was closed.
Dealers paid out money to customers with the commitment to the Government of Canada that the dealers would then be reimbursed.
CTV News has spoken with some of the 200 independent dealers across the country who are out of pocket a combined $11 million, some asking that we hide their identity to protect their business.
In my case, we're talking over $400,000 loss. Huge impact.
Following a months-long investigation,
Can't say anything.
You can't say anything at all?
CTV News has now learned that Transport Canada will allow all car dealers, including Tesla, to submit any historical rebates that were paid out to customers before the program was abruptly closed in January. Transport Canada has also told CTV News they're looking at starting a new program, saying in an email that they're looking at ways to reintroduce a purchase incentive worth up to $5,000 that supports Canadian workers, strengthens our domestic supply chains, and reflects the times we're in.
I think we're going to see a renewed rebate program, and it's going to have some filters there that say the qualifying vehicles either are made in Canada or have substantial content from Canada. There isn't one Tesla production plant in Canada.
Canada's Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association is also calling on Ottawa to scrap the GST on all made-in-Canada vehicles, not just offer incentives for EVs. That's something the Conservatives campaigned on during the last federal election. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
And history was made today at the top of the Royal Canadian Air Force. Lieutenant General Jamie Spicer-Blanchet has become the first woman to lead the Air Force. She succeeds Lieutenant General Eric Kenney, who is retiring after 36 years of service. Coming up, campus crisis.
One of the largest mass layoffs in Ontario's history.
What's behind a challenging chapter for Canadian colleges? Many colleges and universities across Canada are in crisis. A steep drop in foreign students means less tuition money. And now Ontario's largest public sector union is warning that could lead to thousands of workers losing their jobs before the start of the school year. Here's CTV's Heather Wright.
At some schools, international enrollment is down more than 50%, and the fallout has been widespread, financially and academically, with thousands out of a job.
We're seeing one of the largest mass layoffs in Ontario's history, with at least 10,000 job cuts by the end of this year.
The union that represents about 55,000 college faculty and support staff in Ontario say they are worried not only about their members, but about the future of colleges, especially ones that provide accessible training in the skilled trades. Thousands of programs have been canceled, with students worried their programs will be next.
Working conditions and studying conditions are being affected day in and day out.
The federal government has drastically reduced the number of international visas it approves, a policy put in place to help ease pressure on housing, healthcare, and other services. But the result has been perhaps more dramatic than anticipated, with international applicants down sharply and now well below the cap put in place.
We're just not getting the applicants. They're not interested in coming to Canada because of the barriers that they have been told are in place.
Post-secondary schools are now struggling to make ends meet, with layoffs happening across the country. Schools are urging provinces to step up their funding, while also calling on the federal government to do more to attract international students, especially given policy changes south of the border.
There's also a huge opportunity for us, frankly, to strengthen our industries and become real leaders in research and innovation, not just by attracting researchers from the States, but attracting people from around the world who might otherwise have gone there.
Ontario is holding consultations this summer about post-secondary schools, and among the items up for discussion is a tuition freeze that has been in place since 2018. Colleges and universities are asking for it to be lifted. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead. How a Canadian university's research could improve the lives of patients living with a rare disease. For the first time in 130 days, the United Nations is saying tonight one of its teams got about 75,000 liters of fuel into Gaza, which it says still isn't enough to meet a single day's need. The fuel is imperative to keep vital equipment like incubators running. Doctors say they've been forced to cram multiple babies into a single incubator as shortages force hospitals to ration energy supplies. Limited aid deliveries have resumed after months of an Israeli blockade, but humanitarian groups say it isn't enough. Also today, at least 10 children were among 15 killed by an Israeli strike at a medical clinic. Israel says it was targeting a militant. Back here at home, there's new hope for hundreds in this country living with a rare, dangerous, and painful disease. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth on the Canadian research showing positive results so far.
It's vacation getaway day for Ryan DeVoe and his family. DeVoe may appear healthy, but he lives with Fabry disease, which leaves the body unable to break down fatty materials, which can cause organ damage and a shortened lifespan.
There's a buildup around certain organs like my heart, my kidneys, potentially in my brain, of this stuff that my body can't break down.
For nearly 2 decades, DeVoe relied on enzyme replacement therapy, which required routine trips to a specialist. Enter Dalhousie University's Dr. Michael West, the co-author of groundbreaking research on gene therapy.
We designed a study to look at the feasibility of gene therapy in Fabry disease and also the safety of this procedure. And so we were the first gene therapy trial in Fabry disease.
The trial started in 2016 and involved 5 patients, including DeVoe. To put it in simple terms, researchers didn't treat the gene linked to Fabry disease. They instead used stem cells from bone marrow to produce a copy of a normal gene.
And after 6 years, we still have evidence that the new gene is still in these patients and still working.
Ryan DeVoe says participating in this research trial has already simplified the process of his medical treatment and has improved the overall quality of his life.
over the course of a couple of months, you put in a lot of work with it as a patient, and then it's done.
3 of the 5 patients in the trial stopped enzyme therapy, which is also cost-effective.
And that saved us about $3.7 million.
Gene therapy research needs more testing before it becomes conventional medical treatment. There is no cure for Fabry disease, but DeVoe says this latest trial has improved his health. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Still ahead, following in the footsteps of a Canadian icon, the emotional way Terry Fox's younger brother just honored his sibling's legacy. A meaningful and challenging journey has been conquered by the younger brother of Terry Fox. He followed in the famous footsteps of his sibling, but on 2 wheels. Here's CTV's Garrett Barry on his triumphant feat.
A roar from the crowd as the 7,500-kilometer journey reaches its end. For 1 month and 1 day, Daryl Fox and a team of 7 other riders crossed the country, pushing through hills and heat to make it back here, Mile Zero in St. John's, where his older brother Terry began his marathon of hope 45 years ago.
To be on the other side really proved to me that what Terry did was incredible. I don't have words to describe it, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to articulate what Terry accomplished in 1980.
Along the way, endless stories of what cancer has taken from those who lined the streets.
This bracelet belongs to Sam Tebow. I met a family friend of his in Moncton, and she wanted me to give me this bracelet. I said I would bring this bracelet to St. John's and place it on Terry's wrist.
And from those who rode to remember.
Jeremy Henderson was his name, and I actually put his initials on my bike so that every time I felt like I couldn't get up that hill or I couldn't keep going, I looked down and I see his initials.
Even 45 years later, Terry Fox still stands tall, and this ride is just more evidence of the young man's lasting impact.
Many today came to remember seeing Terry leave from St. John's on that incredible journey in 1980.
And you looked at him and thought, this very young man with this bad leg, he was incredible.
Along with the tears and the triumph, $1 million raised for the Terry Fox Foundation. The fight against cancer far from over, but tonight, a sense of accomplishment for Daryl and so many others. Garrett Barry, CTV News, St. John's.
A family that keeps inspiring, such a special moment. That's a snapshot of this Thursday. Heather is here tomorrow. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching, and good night.
Canada's #1 newscast for excellence in journalism.
We begin tonight with breaking news.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina, winner of the Canadian Screen Award for Best National Newscast. Watch weeknights at 11.